President of Collinwood, and joining me this morning is Daniel Culver. Killenberg, how are you, man?
Oh, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. So, you got into Dark Shadows. You've been watching Dark Shadows, man. How's it going?
Oh, it's actually been doing good. I actually enjoy the show.
Cool. How'd you get into it?
Actually, as weird as it sounds, I actually found out from the show from you, but I think what happened was you shared something about it being on Tubi, and, Tubi's free, and that's when I decided to watch it,
Yeah. So, you have this girl, this dark raven-haired girl, played by Alexandra Isles. I know they call her Moltke in the show, but that was her last name at the time. And she plays this girl, this orphan governess named Victoria Winters. And you also meet this man on a train. You don't know who he is quite yet, but he's played by Ryan Mitchell. So what were your thoughts of these two characters?
Oh, actually, for some reason, I don't think I remember that. I'm a little embarrassed, to be honest.
Sorry. So when they get off the train, you meet this man named Burke Devlin. And
Oh, okay, yeah, Burke, yeah.
yeah. And he says she comes up to him and he goes, she goes, are there any how does anyone get around? And he goes, by broomsticks and stuff. And he goes, and by chauffeured cars. And he tells her, welcome to the beginning and end of the world, Miss Winters, after she introduces herself. And she goes, I'm not going that far, just to a place called Collinwood. And I love how he's real chatty with her and smiling at her to a degree until she mentions Collinwood, where Ryan Mitchell's face just does a 180 change, where it's like he goes from sort of flirtatious with her to smiling to why? Like almost like, oh fuck, you're going there? Like why?
Uh, oh, oh, yeah, I actually do like Burke Devlin as well. I think
Yeah.
he's a pretty interesting character.
I love how when they get to the hotel, Burke, Mr. Wells, it's like, Burke, and he's like, I don't remember anyone here. And like the heartbreak on that guy's face at that time, and he's just like, oh. And Victoria picks up on it. She's like, you knew him. And he goes, yeah, ever since he was this high, meaning ever since he was a kid. So there's a lot of, when you meet Burke on the train, he's smiling, right? He's sort of, wait till they see me now, sort of smile. But when he actually gets to Collinsport, gets to the hotel / restaurant, he meets the first person he meets is someone who's known him ever since he was a kid, and Mr. Wells. And he just totally shuns him. What were your thoughts on that, man?
Yeah, that was pretty weird,
Yeah. We meet Maggie Evans as played by Catherine Lee Scott, and she's wearing a blonde wig, which she ditches like in a couple episodes, but thank God. But she's wearing this blonde wig, and they're talking to her, and she says, "You're also a jerk." Like she's like, "Excuse me." She goes, and she tells about how many people she heard it through that you're going up to Collinwood. And it's like you could tell how quickly word spreads around town that something's going on. The scenery gives Collinsport the small town feel, like if the hotel and the train station didn't tell you this was a small town. Maggie's supposed gossip does when she's talking to Victoria. So, what were your thoughts on Maggie Evans and Vicky's interaction with each other?
You know what's funny is I actually forgot that she wore a blonde wig too, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah, I think they I'm not. I think Maggie Evans is a good character, but I know that's not what you asked. So I'm trying to think of how I should say that.
Right. What's really interesting is with Maggie and Vicky Burke, they both tell her to go home. And I'm thinking to myself, it's weird how what Dark Shadows does really well, it's already setting up human error. Burke and Maggie are assuming Vicky has a home to go to. They're not asking, they're assuming. And I've always found that interesting about the beginning episodes where, and this continues when you, oh, sorry, real quick. Where are you at episode wise? I know you were at 180 last night.
Oh, I'm actually still at 180. Well, yeah, I watched 180 last night. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not going to, and I told this to Daniel last night, I'm not going to spoil what comes next because I think you're going to be real intrigued by how the tone of the series does it change in some ways, yes, to me. But just I'll say this, just when you think this series can't get any darker, it does. And because the Phoenix is a very dark character, and we'll get into that. But you have, so when Vicky goes up to the Great House finally, she's been told to basically go home. And by by two people who don't know her. And when she meets Elizabeth Collins Stoddard, who opens the doors gratefully, it's crazy because in the beginning episode, we see Elizabeth and Roger argue that Roger does not want Vicky there. Elizabeth straight to Vicky's face that someone recommended her, Vicky, to her brother. And it's like, wait a second. Wait a second. The same brother who was cutting a promo about that girl coming here? Yeah, I'm not buying that lady. What did you think of that? Like, she lies straight to her face.
Oh yeah, I actually was kind of surprised by that, and then we find out like a different version of the story. They I forgot how, but they lie again.
Yeah, you're right. They keep lying because she keep for part of the beginning episodes. Now they do stop doing this. They sort of pull out of this in a big way. But before they do, they Alexandra Isles, Victoria Winters, keeps pushing the she talked to Mrs. Hopewell, who runs the orphanage, runs the Hammond Foundling Home, and a private investigator inquired about Victoria coming, like why she would be summoned there. And that's what causes Vicky to probe even further to Liz. Like, okay, why'd you bring me here? And she goes, my brother Rod. So I told you why. She keeps saying it. Now here's where things get interesting too. Because we're going to get right into the bleeder valve thing. Bill Malloy, who is the Collins Cannery fishing fleet captain, he also helps run the business. He reports to Elizabeth. Now by this time they found out Burke Devlin's back. They all have. And we see Roger get upset with Vicky that she was on the same train. He even makes the accusation at her about, oh, you why'd you ride the same train with Burke Devlin? She goes, I didn't even know it was Burke Devlin until he introduced himself to me. So, and which she didn't. That's true. She wasn't really aware of who else was on the train with her behind her, because he was behind her. And so he's now, you have this big tense tense moments that Bill Malloy is pushing toward. What did you think of Bill Malloy going to Burke saying, I'm offering you Roger Collins's head on a silver platter?
To be honest, I was actually a little surprised because, I was actually starting to believe, that maybe Burke was wrong, about, what happened. But then, that kind of led to me, maybe he was actually telling the truth.
Yeah, because you're not sure, right? I think that's the greatest thing. But what really helps sort of sell the part of the guilt too, part of the potential guilt. And I want to get your thoughts on this. I love how Lewis Edmonds, by the way, today is the late great Lewis Edmonds' birthday, who played Roger Collins. So happy heavenly birthday to him. Great actor. Just pounds on Sam Evans' door. Open the door, you drunken bum. And I was like, wow. And then when he goes into town to talk to Maggie, he says, hey, I got a potential buyer for your father's paintings. And she goes, well, you should have pounded it on the door. And he goes, oh, pounding on a door is so above my repertoire. And that's exactly what he did. Right?
Oh yeah. Speaking of Sam Evans, how did you feel about them changing actors?
Here's the thing about that. They change actors because I do believe the one actor was snooping on Alexander Isles in the dressing room. So that's why they're changing actors so quickly there. I do believe.
Oh, that could be, because I do remember looking up some about why they placed the actors, and I remember hearing that he sexually assaulted. I mean, sorry, it was sexual harassment, but I can't really go by that because it was just like a thread,
Yeah, he was sort of spying on Alexander in the dressing room, and I think they had caught him doing it, or she caught him, and they let him go, rightfully so. And then they cast David Ford, who is actually married to Nancy Barrett at this point in time, I do believe.
Actually, I do like that too. Even at the beginning, it even announced David Ford as playing him.
Yeah, with Dark Shadows, as you'll notice, when they did this with Matthew Morgan too, because they announced Thayer David being Matthew Morgan as well. And so they'll make a casting announcement change. Now, here's what's odd. The most times they do this is with Burke Devlin, because, and I'm sorry to spoil that for you, but because Ryan Mitchell eventually leaves. But so here's the beginning episodes where they're really laying all sorts of groundwork for characters. What were your thoughts on the first time we see a ghost is when after the bleeder valve, after Vicky nails David with the bleeder valve, she goes, you did it. And Elizabeth's in complete denial. And this causes, Elizabeth to lash out at Victoria. And Vicky is all alone in the great house, and there's a thunderstorm. And even Carolyn sort of sells this before. She goes, you're in for a real treat. Collinwood by candlelight. So she's in the drawing room by herself. The lights are going out, off and on, and then they go out. And there's this figure standing in the drawing room entrance. And she hollers out to it. It doesn't answer her. And really, this is the first ghost. What were your thoughts on that?
I was actually surprised that to be honest, I was surprised we saw a ghost. I know it was kind of obvious there's going to be paranormal stuff because, there's a vampire, but
Right.
It kind of seemed like at first they were trying to make it seem like, oh, the house might be haunted,
Right. Right, because what you're going upon is rumor and innuendo from the villagers, right? From the Collinsport townsfolk.
Yeah, it's true. Oh, and another thing I noticed about Dark Shadows, you might have noticed this too, since since you're a big fan of it, but you notice that a lot of these stories are actually based on famous books. Like I believe the Burke Devlin thing is based on Jane Eyre, but I could be wrong.
The Burke Devlin, Victoria Winters is Jane Eyre as well as Jane Eyre, and Burke Devlin is the Count of Monte Cristo.
Oh, okay, thanks for clearing up. Oh man, that's a little embarrassing to mix that up.
That's all right, but you're right. Victoria Winters is sort of taken from Jane Eyre, but Burke Devlin, and here's what's funny is Burke himself is reading the Count of Monte Cristo about a man who was wrongfully imprisoned. So that's sort of your hint that Burke was wrongfully imprisoned as well. The book Count of Monte Cristo, when he's reading it, and because Carolyn calls that to the attention that he is reading the book. So when we first meet Carolyn Stoddard Collins, by the way, played by Nancy Barrett, she's in a blue whale. She's shaking her hips. She's dancing. What did you think of Carolyn?
I thought, to be honest, I thought she was kind of annoying at first, but I kind of grew on her.
She's this rich, entitled kid, right?
Yeah, I was actually surprised when Burke Devlin said that he was gonna paddle her right on the dance floor, because like today, you probably wouldn't hear someone say that, especially like a grown man saying that to a teenager.
Right. And I was talking to Don Schmidt about this, about the talk that they would give, how Burke's private detective says about how he wished his wife could move like that or shake her hips. And he was telling, and he watched this series, I believe, when it first aired. Now, we didn't, obviously. I watched it in the 90s, and you watched it, well, you're watching it now. So he was telling me, and it's something my grandparents had told me and my mom, that was the talk of the 60s. That's how they talked. So that's the language they used. And that was ever present in the series.
Oh, hey, was the woman that played Carolyn Stoddard an actual teenager, or was she an adult like they are now?
I don't know how young Nancy Barrett was. I do believe she was an adult, but she was maybe in her early 20s. I'd have to look.
Oh yeah, because I wanted to say that I noticed, like, in one of the first few episodes you could kind of see her nipples, but I wasn't sure if I should say that if she was a teenager.
See, it's weird because Carolyn, who is staying because she doesn't want to leave her mother. You notice how her mother's trying to have her marry Joe Haskell, who's played by Joel Carruthers. What did you think of Joe?
I actually didn't think he seemed like a nice guy, but
Yeah.
obviously she doesn't want to marry him.
Right. To me, because her mother has been living on the grounds for the past 18 years. She doesn't leave the grounds. She'll walk out of the house, but she doesn't step off the grounds. So Carolyn, to me, because she's rich, she has all this money, she could take her money and go. She doesn't. If she were to leave, she doesn't have to leave with Joe. So it's like, I've always wondered why she didn't have to leave. And before I give you my thoughts, I want to get yours. So why didn't you think Carolyn just up and left?
I think it's because she loved her mom, basically.
Yeah. I think that is a part of the reason she really loved her mom. But here's my biggest reason. And I love your reason. She loves her mom. She also loves to argue with her mom too, like Bella back. Don't marry me off to Joe, Mom. Don't try to marry me off to Joe. But here's this girl, this teenager, right, who could leave the house, could just pack up and leave anywhere, literally. Her father has not been there for 18 years. He just took her story that she has been handed. He just left. He just up and left. She is literally, to me, staying there waiting for that son of a bitch to come back.
Oh yeah, I could see that.
You know, like Paul, for those who don't know, I'm talking about Paul Stoddard. And here's the thing, I don't want to spoil too much because they're going to get into Paul Stoddard here soon for you. I know you're at 180, so I won't spoil what they get into. But it gets real interesting because you're sort of getting by the next, especially the first character you're going to meet, and then the character he brings with him. You're really going to get in, as much as they get into those two characters, you sort of get a brief history of Paul. So I won't spoil what they say for you because I know you haven't watched that yet. But so after the whole bleeder valve thing is when Bill Malloy goes to Burke. And I think a lot of the reason Burke does this is because he wants to save David's soul. David tried to kill his dad. Bottom line, right?
Oh yeah, we definitely know that.
Right? He removes the bleeder valve. And amazing, right? They have this kid. This is pre-Michael Myers. And this kid removes the bleeder valve. Now, he didn't take no butcher knife. It wouldn't have surprised me if he did. But he removes the bleeder valve, causing his father's accident. I think that's why Bill Malloy goes to Burke. He wants to get Roger out of there. And so when Bill Malloy dies, when he gets killed, who did you think did this?
Well, to be honest, I thought it was Roger Collins.
Right. The storytellers, the writers do a great job misdirecting, right?
Oh yeah, I definitely think they did.
Yeah. And here's the thing too, they even cast shade because Victoria Winters really is your show. Alexandra Isles is your show's primary baby face. She's the main protagonist. So they do a great job through her, and she does an amazing job. When she sees the pen that Burke has, and she realizes that's the pen that may have killed Bill Malloy, that probably did kill Bill Malloy. And now Burke gave this guy a pen, so she suspects Burke. So they're even throwing a little shade at Burke.
Oh yeah, that's true too.
Yeah. What did you think of when they showed Bill Malloy's body and Alexandra Isles and Nancy Barrett, they're standing at the top of Widow's Hill, and Alexandra's screaming. She's going, ah! Her scream is really good.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. It actually seemed like a genuine scream.
It was too. Like, she could have been in future horror movies to come with that scream. She was really, Alexandra is an amazing actress that just sells, the innocence of Victoria, really. And so her scream is just like, oh my God, they saw a dead body. And Carolyn's just in complete shock. She's just like,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. To go back to my question earlier, Nancy Barrett, she actually was 23 when the show was out.
oh wow, cool. cool. I did not know that.
Yeah, I actually did it because I just looked up like her name, and well, I mean, yeah, and it says, well, so according to Wikipedia, she was born in 1943. I know people are gonna tell me how that's not accurate, but I guarantee you that probably is her actual birth age. Oh, excuse me, her birth year.
Right.
Because there's people who will do that. Like if you mention Wikipedia, they'll be like, "Oh, that's not correct," but it's not always false.
Right. Wiki is what me and Daniel call 50-50, unless it's usually a birthday.
But actually, didn't you say I think I did ask you if she was underage, like character-wise, and I think you said she was actually 20, or maybe yeah. Oh yeah, she was. Oh yeah.
Yeah, she was in her. I think she was in her 20s. I always felt she was under the age of 21 because here's the thing with women: women have great, beauty. So when you look at a woman, they always look younger, no matter what. So when I looked at her, I'm thinking, man, she's got to be about at least 20 in this show. So I always put her right at sort of where Jamie Lee Curtis's age was when Jamie Lee Curtis was 19, but I put her Nancy Barrett at 20, so she was 23. That's amazing.
Yeah. I just thought she looked up because, like I said, like I swear, in one of the first few episodes, you could see her nipples. Like I thought to myself, I don't think she's wearing a bra. For those that don't know, I'm not really a pervert person. So it's actually even weird that I even took notice of that.
See, it's weird because they're in these nightgowns, right? I think it's when they wear nightgowns, like Carolyn especially. So during the show, when they finally kill Bill Malloy. We talked about that. They do the great job of planting the seeds of who done it. When you found out who it was, how shocked were you?
Oh, you mean who killed Bill Malloy? Yeah, I was actually pretty shocked. Like it was the last person I suspected.
Right. Matthew Fair David gets put in the beginning episodes as Matthew Morgan. He gets recast. Matthew Morgan gets recast. And I love Thayer David's performance in this. I love how when Mrs. Johnson, Clarissa Blackburn, who's coming up to the house when she's coming to work at Collinwood, did you see the look he was giving Daniel when he was like trimming the hedges? He's like looking at her like, is this woman coming to take my job?
Oh, yeah.
Like, he was. How paranoid do you think he was?
I think he was pretty paranoid. Do you think he would have been willing to kill her like he did Bill Malloy?
That's a great question. Here's how I'll answer that. If they would not have, if Matthew Morgan didn't have a violent temper, I think he would have attempted to kill Burke again privately. I often think Bill Malloy's accidental death, if you will, by the hands of Matthew, because I don't think I do believe Matthew didn't mean to kill him. But I think a lot of the reason Matthew ends up killing Bill isn't just to protect Liz, it's because he couldn't get a second attempt at Burke.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah, I was actually shocked by that. Like when he was trying to kill Vicky, and then Liz caught him in the act, and he actually then tried to grab at her too.
Right, he's desperate at this point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just full blown at this point. What were your thoughts on Clarissa Blackburn, Mrs. Johnson, who most Dark Shadows fans call the Jane Bond, well, James Bond really too, of the franchise? She's the ultimate spy.
Oh, I actually thought I thought it was pretty interesting how she was like working with Burke, and secretly.
Right. She they're going behind I love how Carolyn comes up to Burke's apartment and he says about the they say about poor Mrs. Johnson, and Carolyn suggests that Mrs. Johnson come work for her mother. Oh, God. So you have Mrs. Johnson, who's spying for Burke. We have Bill Malloy, dead. We have Matthew Morgan, who killed Bill Malloy. Prior to that being revealed, we have one of the greatest special effects sequences in the 60s, if not the greatest. We have the portrait of Josette and the ghost coming out of the portrait. What were your thoughts on that?
I thought it was pretty cool, actually. And like you said, it was in the 60s. That makes it even better.
Right. I love how she's walking out of the portrait. Like, literally, just look like she's walking down some steps and nothing's in front of her. And she materializes. She physically materializes and starts dancing around the old house.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
It's just like, holy shit. It was an amazing, to me, it's an effect that I think everybody loves and would love if they see it, because it's just, this is a show that really pushed the envelope with itself, not just with its audience, but with itself. And every time it felt like it was topping itself at times.
Yeah, it's true. What I'm actually kind of surprised by is they had special effects like that, but it kind of seems like sometimes like the camera got bumped,
Yeah, there's a lot of bloopers in Dark Shadows. I think I told you this in Messenger once before you started watching it. I'm not sure. I might have. I might not have. But so I'll tell you now. There's a lot of bloopers in Dark Shadows. So you'll see bloopers even post Barnabas, which I'm really excited. I can't wait till you get to episode 211, because I'm gonna bring you on right as you get to 220 and get sort of your thoughts so far at of Barnabas, because by that time he's in the show, and he just really also your thoughts on the other two characters who come along. But because I told this to Daniel last night. We talked a lot last night. I don't want to spoil it for him. So eventually, the widows and the ghost of Bill Malloy help kill Matthew Morgan. What were your thoughts on that?
I was actually, those special effects were good too, but I was actually kind of shocked he died that way. Like I think it's assumed he died of fright. I know that's what the Dark Shadows wiki says he died from, but I don't think that's actually been straight up said though. But yeah, I did like how he tried to like axe them.
Yeah, he's trying. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. I love how before that happens, Josette appears to Vicky in the secret room of the old house, and she says, "You'll be okay."
I like that too. Like she was actually helping Vicky.
Yeah. And the widows and Bill Malloy seek their vengeance upon Matthew Morgan. You're right. Fright is the official listing, but what they say, I think they say heart attack, in the show, but really, you're right. He was frightened to death. And I want to get your thoughts on, what did you think when Roger and Burke, when they walked in on him and he's sitting there and they're talking to him and he just falls over?
Oh, wait, did he pass out or just like fall over?
He was dead at this point, but he just fell over. He passed out. He fell. I think he fell over. I want to say.
Sorry, we still talking about Matthew?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. For some reason, I thought we were talking about Roger. For some reason, sorry about that.
No, it's all right.
Yeah, but yeah, that was. I think they did. I think that actor did pretty good with that scene.
Yeah. Like they're pointing the shotguns at him, like Burke and Roger, and, and he just collapses. He's dead. And Roger, like, at first he's talking about it with Liz, and then he's just like, I don't want to talk about it no more. He's like, he's done. So after this, the first real monster we get, this is pre-Barnabas, is Dana Malaise, Laura, Stockridge, Collins, the Phoenix arc. What did you think, Ben?
I actually think it's pretty good so far. Like that one part where they put the painting, when you hear the painting scream, I actually thought, like, she died, but then she appeared, the next episode.
Yeah, again, the Ghost of Josette is used heavily in this arc as well, right? Because you have many protagonists now in this arc, especially. Not just Vicky. Yes, Vicky's ever present. You have Carolyn. You have the ghost. You have Dr. Peter Guthrie, and you have the attorney, Frank Gardner, I want to say is his name. So you have 4 protagonists, and there's the Ghost of Josette, who is leading toward the clues of what's really going on. But before all that, I love how Dana Malay is trying to be sympathetic, like trying to fool everybody, fool Vicky, she's not really so much fooling Liz. Liz does not want, really, Liz is possessive of David too. That's what helps this. Joan Bennett does an amazing job. She will never get enough credit in my opinion, for Elizabeth, for the way she portrayed Elizabeth. But I love how Dana Malay convinces Vicky to help her talk to David.
I like that too. I also want to state, I know I'm going off topic a little bit, well, not really, but I also like how, Sam Evans kept painting, Laura on fire.
Yeah, right. He's like, and what it is Laura in the painting. Now, you can tell this, even though you can't see anything. Laura is naked in the painting, is what it is. And the flames are sort of surrounding her. And the painting is unfinished. The painting was never finished. I love how Sam shows it to Roger, and he says, "What does it mean? What does it mean?" He can't stop painting the same painting. You're right. So what were your thoughts on David Ford, Sam Evans' reaction to, showing it to Roger?
I was a little shocked he showed it to Roger, but because I probably wouldn't. I'd probably try to hide that if I was, if I was painting someone's wife, like that, not knowing why, and
Right. Like, he can't stop painting this woman. And finally, he just gives the painting. They just take the painting, and they put it in. David puts it in his room, and there's the silhouette of a boy in the painting. And I love how they do this. They use another effect. Here's the Ghost of Josette, and she puts David within the painting. What were your thoughts on that effect?
I thought that was pretty cool too. Because it kind of makes sense. David would be in it too.
Right. Because the legend of the Phoenix is every 100 years, and the Phoenix has to consume their child. To we don't know what that promised land would have been. Something Scott really brought up when we did our podcast of Dark Shadows villains, and I agree with him. He made great points that there's a moment where you don't know, what is that paradise? We're not exactly sure. And I agree with him, we're not, because we know that and are you at the shack where her and David are in the shack, or no?
Oh, I don't think they're currently, but I'm on the episode where the last episode I watched was when, they went to the funeral place, and they
Okay.
Yeah, they saw the graves and that there was nothing in them.
Okay, so you're right at the grave sequence where there's nothing in them. So I won't spoil anymore because I don't want to. So they go to the grave of Laura Murdoch Stockridge and stuff, and this is after the real Laura Collins' body vanished, right? So there's now nothing in the other tomb of the old cemetery, and by this time you have Vicky, Frank, Gardner, Dr. Peter Guthrie, who's in it, and I love how they recruit Joe Haskell, who is unwilling. He's not so willing to go digging up a grave.
Oh yeah, I actually don't blame him on that. And one thing I thought was weird is, they were talking about, well, he was talking about doing it legally. I actually, if I was him, I would have waited till they could do it legally.
Right? What did you think of Dr. Peter Guthrie?
I thought he's a very interesting character. Like I don't is the parapsychologist thing he is that even a real thing, or do you not know?
I'm pretty sure it is.
Oh, okay, yeah, but yeah, he's like, telling them to do like seances and stuff. Like he's definitely I wouldn't say strange because people have their own style of doing things, but it was actually interesting how they pulled paranormal and like grave robbing into it.
Right. They have this whole. At first, when Dr. Guthrie arrives, he's very neutral, right? Like, what were your thoughts? He wasn't on one side or the other. He was very in between.
Oh yeah, I would say yeah, he was in between.
Yeah. And he has this finally when he's convinced, then that's when he's really we're going to open the grave of Laura Stockbridge College. And he asked Frank, he asked, Carolyn, and is there anyone who knows Collinsport really well? And they say, yeah, Joe Haskell. Joe only does this as a complete favor to Carolyn.
That's true. He did. That's and
It's like,
Maggie wasn't too happy about that. I'm sorry
right,
to interrupt you.
right, no, right. She's like, because by this time, Daniel's right. Carolyn and Joe were dating. Obviously, Carolyn gets into Burke and they start kissing. Also, Burke kisses Victoria. Ryan Mitchell was a lucky man. But and so Carolyn is one who's really interested in Burke. Vicky's sort of she's playing hard to get. She's like but she's also I love how Vicky they always kept options open for Victoria. So with Carolyn, she was more set on Burke. And Joe and Carolyn break up. And I love how Catherine Lee Scott plays Maggie Evans at this point, where when she looks at Joe, she's you can tell she's interested in him, right?
Oh yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so eventually they start dating. And by this time that we're talking about, they are dating. So when Carolyn calls after Joe to come help her, this isn't for me, this is for my mom. And he's like, okay. Like, I felt so bad for Joe Haskell. He was in between a rock and a hard place.
Oh, that's true. Oh, I know. Oh, how do you feel about like when Laura tried to use her powers on Peter Guthrie, but it didn't fully work?
Right, he's like knelt down. It sort of is working, but David steps in. David helps Peter Guthrie inadvertently. So, and that's what's interesting. I won't reveal what happens to you because I know you're almost through this. You're almost through the Phoenix arc. But it's really interesting what happens from here on, because what happens from on involves Josette. It involves so many other things, and I won't spoil it for you. But I did. Josette's not really a spoiler at this point. We know she's involved, right?
Oh, sorry, I'm still here.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know if you heard me, but Josette's not really a spoiler at this point, right? We know she's involved.
Oh yeah, that's true.
What did you think of? You have. What did you think of the special effects that they use in the Phoenix, like throughout so
I
far?
think I think it's pretty good.
I love. I tell you who does not get enough credit to Joan Bennett. When you realize how bad Laura is, it's through Joan Bennett's character. It's through Elizabeth, because you still, even though Elizabeth can be very cold at times, you still feel something for her, in my opinion. Would you agree or disagree?
Oh yeah, I agree.
Okay, so Elizabeth, who can be very cold at times and she's very direct too, and when Laura, you really realize how bad Laura is. Because it's one thing to threaten somebody, it's another to follow through. And she follows through by taking out Elizabeth, by helping Elizabeth be put in a hospital. What were your thoughts on that? Sorry.
I I actually kind of felt bad for Elizabeth. I know you already kind of mentioned that, but I actually felt bad for her.
Yeah.
You could see Laura's like evil. I don't know. Some people might not like Elizabeth, but I really don't hate her. But even if you do, there's such a thing as what they call like a lesser evil.
Right. I think Elizabeth, here's the thing with all matriarchs of Colin. You're going to notice this as the series goes forward. Whether it's Elizabeth, whether it was the next matriarch, Joshua, who's the lead of the house in 1795. All matriarchs have weight on their shoulders, and it's the weight of those secrets or those potential secrets that they have to carry. That burden is theirs. And that's what I'll say most about Dark Shadows is Dark Shadows, for its ghost, for its goblins, its demons, its witches, its Diablos, by the way. I will give you the spoiler. You're gonna see the devil down the road, but
Oh wow.
I had to drop that on you today. But I will give you that. You will see the devil, not anytime soon, but you'll see what I mean. So it's real interesting what happens with Dark Shadows because they keep going. I mean, it's so amazing that this series itself, it starts off it starts off as gothic. It's located not just in a small town slash fishing village, but this brooding gothic mansion. And what you learn through Elizabeth, and I want to get your thoughts on this. The great house isn't the original Collinwood. The old house is. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I thought that was actually a pretty interesting reveal.
Yeah. So far, who's your favorite character? Do you have one?
Um, I'd say honestly, I know it seems like a simple answer, but I'd say Victoria Winters.
Yeah. My favorite all-time character is Alexander's Victoria Winters. I love her portrayal of the character. They never turn her heel, unfortunately. I don't know if you saw my how I would turn Victoria Winters heel video I did. It was really interesting and fun. But Vicky is every bit a strong protagonist. Even though it's taken from Jane Eyre, I don't honestly feel, even though the back sort of the story of the backstory is Jane Eyre-esque, but I don't look at Victoria Winters as Jane Eyre, or like a Jane Eyre character, if you would. I think what Alexander did most was make Victoria her own character.
Yeah, I would say that too. Yeah. I've never read Jane Eyre, so I guess I'm not really the best source for that. But I'd say they made her own character.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think. What did you think of the location so far? You have they take now in the beginning episodes. You see that they are using sets, but there's times they use actual shots of the Seaview Terrace where Alexandra Victoria Winters is coming out of the Seaview Terrace. What did you make of that?
I thought, that was interesting as well. I know I keep saying that, but yeah, I really do.
No, it's fine. They also use like the real. I love how they use real location when Roger's walking into town and he's waving at people, and there's actually people there. So they're using a real location for like at times the harbor, and I love how they use Sam Evans walking toward the blue whale as well. That's in there. So for all the sets that Cy Tomanoff did, Cy Tomanoff does not get enough credit for not just the look and the feel of the sets, but the look and the feel of the town to me.
Yeah, I'd say the town, I could definitely see that as like a real town,
Right. Collinsport, I really think what I'm trying to say is they really did a great job bringing Collinsport to life.
Yeah, I'd say it's a good way to say that.
Right? Like, I know I jumbled my words too here. So, who, I won't, again, I didn't want to spoil too much with Daniel. He's at episode 180, and I cannot wait to get your thoughts on Barnabas when he comes. Is there anything you want to add before we go?
What's
Was that
Facebook? But one of my cousins, well, she's not really my cousin. She's actually my dad's cousin. I'm not gonna say names in case she doesn't, in case she doesn't want me. But one of my cousins used to actually watch Dark Shadows with my great grandma.
right? Cool. That's cool. Now I heard the cousin part.
Because
Sorry. Go ahead.
to her about it, because she told Spark, she's like, back when I was younger.
Hello?
And well, she told me about the new one. She's like, well, there's a newer one. I was like, well, I think he likes the old one, actually.
I'm sorry about that. You were cutting out throughout that. If you can repeat yourself. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine. It's actually interesting because me and her were actually talking about Twilight one day.
Yeah.
And I mentioned something about like I asked her how she liked it, and she said that vampires shouldn't sparkle. And then she mentioned that there was a show when she was younger called Dark Shadows. That's sort of how I found out about that. And I even mentioned that I actually knew about Dark Shadows because you actually like it. And she mentioned that there was a newer one. I was like, oh, I think he likes the old one, actually.
Well, here's the thing. I love my favorite is the original series. I love the original series. The revival is really good, even though it's one season. There's 3 Dark Shadows movies that aren't canon to the series. And hey, the new Dark Shadows series is still being shopped around, which I'm excited for. I'm hoping it gets picked up. But I am really excited that you're going through this journey of going through Collinsport. It's really fun. I think it's really cool, man, that you took this journey, this leap of faith in the Dark Shadows.
Oh,
Because
thanks.
no, it's amazing because I always feel Dark Shadows is something everybody should view, because here's something that really, for all the things Dark Shadows does, what it does really well is it tells you a story of these characters who are so interesting, and you really can't pull away from it.
Oh yeah, that's true. And actually, one thing I will admit to is, see, I remember you shared something about the DVD, and I was
Mhm.
actually thinking about possibly buying it, to be honest.
Yeah.
But then I did read that it was a soap opera, so that did kind of make me hesitant a little bit. But
Right.
then, like I started watching on Tubi, and I will tell people, do not judge it because it's soap opera. It's actually pretty good. Like
Yeah.
you, like I thought, see, I hate to admit this, I thought soap operas were these things like that was full of like romance and stuff like that, but it's actually kind of like stuff like the kind of movies me and you watch.
Right. This is a gothic soap opera, is what it is.
Yeah, like I said, I never thought I'd enjoy a soap opera, but yeah, I'm enjoying it.
I am really glad you're enjoying it, man. I'm glad you're enjoying the journey and having fun with it. I cannot wait to get you back on to talk Barnabas, talk about Jonathan Frid's before his performance. Before we go, the Jonathan Frid documentary, Dark Shadows and Beyond, is coming out October 5th. You guys can go pick that up on Amazon if you want. Link to Daniel Culver's channel it will be in the description box. You can also get him at Killenberg. Daniel's also on Facebook, Daniel Culver. Look him up. Check him out. Daniel, man, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome, and thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome, man. Have a good one.
Yep, you too.